This is why karma has no deadline. I'm a middle school dropout and I became a depressed shut-in from the age of 14 to 20. When I was 20 years old, I got a dog who completely helped me turn my life around. I named him Sherlock, and because of him, I started going outside more to take him on walks. Then I got my GED and started going to college with the intent of giving him a better life. I was 24 and living at home with my brother and my father. Around this time, my brother got a girlfriend. A week into their relationship, Sherlock bit her ankle. It didn't break skin or do serious damage, but everything went downhill because of this. My brother and his girlfriend plotted to kill my dog and throw his body into the river. However, my brother couldn't bring himself to do it and told me everything, followed by breaking up with his girlfriend. A week later, she was kicked out from her residence and my brother ran to her rescue. After they got back together, she would call me using his phone to threaten and scare me into thinking that she would murder Sherlock. I put Sherlock in a training class to sort out his biting issues and he made major improvements. I was stressed and always kept him locked in my room while I was at work for fear of my brother getting to him. I told my brother that I was actively looking for an apartment and would be moving out soon. However, one day when I came home from work, Sherlock was gone and so was my brother. Part 2 of Why Karma Has No Deadline. Panic rushed through me as I searched everywhere for my dog. I texted and called my brother, leaving him messages begging him to bring him back. I called the police to report the theft of my dog, but the dispatcher wouldn't listen to me. The next day, I received a call that broke me into a million pieces. My Sherlock's body was found deceased by animal control 100 miles away from home. The city he was found in was where my brother's girlfriend lived. I immediately left home in pure shock. My friends housed me for a few days because I didn't feel safe at home and later found a room for rent within a week because it was easier without pets. I was grieving over the loss of my best friend. My brother betrayed me for a girl he only knew for a few months. After this, I couldn't keep my grades up and dropped many of my classes. I'm also financially in debt because I didn't have much money to start with when I moved. My brother admitted to my mom that him and his girlfriend did indeed kill my dog. However, she doesn't want him in jail. Shortly after, I found out my brother's girlfriend moved into the house. She wanted the dog gone and that's why they killed Sherlock. A year later, I found out from my dad that she died from an illness. I was overjoyed for karma was being served. My brother is now depressed and I couldn't help but to feel some kind of closure. I'm in therapy and doing a lot better, however there's always going to be that missing piece. Story time about how my friend scheduled her wedding on the day of my family's death anniversary. 7 years ago, I lost my husband, daughter, and mother to a car accident. They were hit by a drunk driver that drove through a red light and killed all of them on impact. Their deaths greatly affected me. If it weren't for my friends and years of therapy, I would be in a much lower place. I'm thankful for their support and have been able to process my grief properly. 2 years ago, I took a better paying job and moved to a different city. It's a 7-hour drive, but I travel back occasionally to visit friends and of course my family's graves on their death anniversary. My friend Amy announced that she was engaged last year to her boyfriend of 3 months. My friend group and I were shocked because we never met him or knew that she was even dating anyone. Nonetheless, we were happy for her. They postponed the wedding due to COVID, but now the cases in my country are less than 10 and she's having it. Last week, Amy called me to tell me that she scheduled her wedding on the same day as my family's death anniversary. She asked me not to visit their graves and attend her wedding instead. I asked her why she picked that date and she told me that she wanted to and I can't gatekeep the date. Then I asked her why I can't visit their graves and she said it's because she doesn't want my sadness and grief to take the attention away from her wedding. When I told her I wouldn't miss visiting my family's graves, things got complicated. Part 2 of how my friend scheduled her wedding on my family's death anniversary. I tried to compromise with Amy and tell her that I'd attend my family's graves after her wedding. She said she wanted my support for the entire day and dedicated towards her, but she'd think about my offer. She was there for me when they passed and I'm torn, but I refused to miss going to their graves. I called my other friends to let them know what Amy asked of me. They were livid for me as they had no idea what Amy was planning for the wedding. We arranged a Zoom call and discussed why she was being so insensitive towards me. It started off calm, then Amy just blew up. At first, she tried to explain that having a wedding on the same day would turn a negative situation into a positive one. When she realized it wasn't convincing enough, it felt as though a mask had fallen from her face and she started yelling and insulting me. She said she's tired of having to play the supportive friend role and that it's been 7 years, so I should just get over it by now or go join my family in the ground. My friends lost their anger and called her every name in the book. It hurt to have lost another person in my life, but in a sense, she never really was a good friend. None of our friends are going to the wedding now and have all blocked her on social media. My friends offered to go visit my family's grave with me and I accepted. We're planning to also make a scrapbook with my family's pictures in it. For once, I'm actually looking forward to this day. Story time about how a guy led me on, so I got with his dad. I had just moved out of my parents' place and moved in with some friends. I had been single for about 6 months after a 3-year relationship. During that time, I worked on myself while also mingling with people here and there, but no one seriously caught my eye. That changed when my friends had a kickback and invited a guy named Stefan. We were instantly drawn to each other and ended up talking closely the whole night. Then we started messaging and going on cute little dates. Over the next few weeks, I started developing real feelings for him. When I told him that I liked him, he reciprocated that he felt the same. One thing led to another and we started hooking up. He even introduced me to his dad who was divorced and his younger brother. I would give his younger brother rides to school sometimes when he or his dad couldn't. I'd also go over to his house and wait for him sometimes after class while hanging out with his family. Everything seemed to be going great and I thought that we would eventually make it official, but I wasn't in a rush or thinking too much into it. Then one day I texted Stefan for a quick hangout, if you know what I mean, before my class started. I was surprised to see him text back and say, "Nah, I'm gonna pass." I thought it was weird but respected it and assumed that he was just having a bad day. However, over the next few weeks he became distant and cold towards me. Then I found out why. Part 2 of how a guy led me on, so I got with his dad. One morning, I woke up and texted Stefan the usual good morning text. When I didn't get a response all day, I just shrugged it off as him being busy. A short while later, I checked his story on Instagram and saw that he was with his coworker. When I clicked her tag and went to her profile, there was a picture of them together, kissing. I was hurt but mostly shocked. When I checked the post, it was clear that they recently started dating. He had commented a bunch of heart and kissing emojis under it as well. When I confronted Stefan, he acted like we were just friends and made me feel stupid for thinking there was anything there in the first place. I felt invalidated and crazy. Unfortunately, I had already told Stefan's dad that I would take his younger brother to school the next morning. When I showed up, his dad told me that he could actually take him. However, I asked to tag along since I was already there. After we dropped him off, we started talking about smoothies. Somehow, we ended up going back to their house and I made us smoothies. We were really getting along and spent the whole day together. The next night when Stefan wasn't home, we met up again. He made me dinner and we danced to some romantic music. I ended up hooking up with Stefan's dad that night. The next morning, I snapped a picture of us in bed and sent it to Stefan on Snapchat. He went ballistic and then I blocked him. I hooked up with his dad a few more times after that. Story time about how my grandfather single-handedly ruined the family name. My grandfather on my paternal side was a native of a small city. He was popular and known for having one of the best catering services in the area. He also owned a bank. His family was so popular that the other members in town owned businesses as well, such as flower shops, liquor stores, and so on. However, my grandfather was a huge narcissist. He was abusive to my father. When my father was only 7 years old, my grandmother passed away from cancer in her discs. She was the sweetest person and a ray of sunshine. Not even 2 months later, my grandfather brought home a minor who was only 16 years old and married her. He was already cheating on my grandmother with her. His new wife was also abusive towards my father in traumatizing ways. Even though he had a new wife, my grandfather still belonged to the streets. He was on a clapping spree most of his life, cheating on her with multiple women. Most of the time, to be able to do the deed, he would take Viagra. During one of his hookups, he had a heart attack and died with a full-on erection. The mortician needed help slaying his kraken for his viewing, so they had to tape it down to his thigh because it would not go down. His wife quickly found out about his affairs and was so angry that she buried him without a tombstone. This happened when I was around 12 years old. However, the story doesn't end there. Part 2 of how my grandfather single-handedly ruined the family name. After my grandfather's death, the kids from his previous marriages and his affairs came forward. Since my grandfather was wildly successful and rich, they started fighting with his wife to take my grandfather's house and belongings. It was a whole fiasco that involved court cases and lawyers. His widowed wife didn't want to deal with anything that had to do with him, including his children. She left all his belongings in the house to them to fight over like cats and dogs. Due to this, the whole town found out everything that happened, including the cause of his embarrassing death. Plot twist, his widowed wife apparently already had suspicions that my grandfather was cheating on her, so she got herself a younger man on the side. Right after she buried him, she came out victorious with a younger man and moved to a different town in Puerto Rico. She was living like a queen on the beaches with her new man, while back in town, the family name was going to shambles. Their perfect exterior and fake facades had now crumbled as their dirty towels were being exposed. They went from a clean prestige title to being known as cheaters, starting from my grandfather to his children. All the boys in the family had cheated on their wives, including my father, who cheated on my mother when I was 7 with a 17-year-old. Now the family name is a laughingstock in that town. People who want to talk about scandalous things will always bring up that family name. This is why you should be careful when staying home alone. In 2017, a local nurse's aide was attacked in her sleep by a man who had been hiding in her home. He waited for her to fall asleep before sexually assaulting her and beating her, leaving her in a vegetative state. A few weeks later, she passed away from her injuries. A week after her assault, I could have been his next target. At the time, my boyfriend was working nights Friday through Sunday and I worked as an aide in a nursing home. I didn't get home until 8 p.m. and would be by myself until 8 a.m. when my boyfriend got home. It was a Sunday night when I got home and everything was normal as I left it. I ate some food and stayed up a bit in the living room. Around 12 a.m. I decided to go to my bedroom, but the only thing that I didn't check was the back part of the house like I usually would. The bathroom in my bedroom has 2 doors. One leads to the hallway and one leads to my bedroom. I always closed the one to the hallway but left the one to the bedroom open. Around 1:30 in the morning, I was watching TV in bed when I heard footsteps coming from the back hallway. I initially thought it was the TV and just brushed it off. Then I heard the footsteps coming closer. I got out of bed and went towards the bathroom to inspect the noise when the door to the hallway suddenly swung open, almost hitting me in the face. This is when panic set in. Part 2 of why you should be careful when staying home alone. When the door swung open, I immediately punched it out of pure physical instinct. The door slammed shut again. At this point, I knew someone was in the house with me. I ran to my bed and was so panicked that I grabbed my phone and called the first person in my recent calls list. It was my boyfriend's mother. I shakingly told her what was going on and she quickly called the police for me while staying on the line. A couple minutes went by when the footsteps approached my bedroom door again and I could almost sense their hand on the doorknob. Suddenly, the police knocked on my window and the front door. Then I heard footsteps running and the back door slam. Luckily, I lived close by to the station and there was already a unit nearby, so they got there within a couple minutes. When the police did their investigations, they found that the back door's lock had been picked. The lock on that door was actually meant for an interior lock that the previous owners had installed in order to get inside in cases of emergencies. They said that this person had been waiting in the back bedroom and waited for me to go to sleep before making their move. They also said they were almost certain that it was related to the nurse's aide who was attacked a week prior. This person watched my routine and knew that I would be home alone. I'm thankful that I'm safe, but it scares me to think what would have happened if I was actually sleeping that night. Unfortunately, the person was never caught. Crime Fanatic Friday Part 2, The Boy in the Box. Sadly, the DNA and dental testing was a bust. Several people came forward with information relating to the case, but police weren't able to verify any testimonies. However, a few theories have been introduced over the years. In 2002, a psychiatrist called in about the case with a promising lead on behalf of a woman named Martha. During a 3-hour interview, Martha talked about her childhood. She told police her mother had purchased the boy in 1954 from his biological parents. The mother physically and sexually abused Martha and the boy. One day, the boy fell sick in the bathtub and the mother became enraged, beating him to death. She wrapped the boy in a blanket, put him in the car, and took Martha with her to dispose of him. However, Martha suffered from serious mental health issues, and this made her an unreliable witness. An investigator who wasn't giving up on the case sought the help of a psychic in New Jersey. This psychic stated that the boy came from a house in Philadelphia, which he described in great detail, despite never having been there. The house was less than 2 miles down the road from where the boy was found. It was a foster home ran by a couple who had over 20 foster children. They had a bassinet that they bought from an auction like the one that the boy was discovered in, as well as blankets similar to the one that the boy was wrapped in. After countless interviews, nothing concrete was found. To this day, the case is still unsolved. Crime Fanatic Friday, The Boy in the Box. The year was 1957, and it was a cold and dewy morning in Philadelphia. A man was poking around a portion of road that was used as a dumping ground for garbage. He poked something that he originally thought was a doll packed away in a bassinet box. He was so convinced it was a doll that he didn't call the police. However, the next day, a news report broadcasted a missing 4-year-old girl. This is when he questioned himself about the doll he saw and decided to call it in. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found wrapped in a flannel blanket was the nude, badly injured body of a little boy. Police estimated the boy to be between 4 to 6 years old with a full set of baby teeth. His cause of death was severe trauma to the head, but his body showed signs of years of abuse. He was malnourished, covered in bruises, had a scar under his chin, and surgical scars on his ankle and groin. The police were confident that this case would be solved quickly. However, days turned into weeks and no one came forward to identify the body. Hundreds of recruits scoured the woods looking for any clues. The paper distributed over 200,000 flyers. The child was unidentified for years to come. That is until 1998, when a segment of America's Most Wanted led to a spike in interest in the case. His body was exhumed for a DNA sample.